Hello, everybody from Kassel, Germany. I will shortly introduce myself with a few thoughts on the state where we are. I'm a landscape architect and an urbanist coming from the practical field of work, but now teaching in Kassel University since 2 years ago. Landscape architecture has arrived in the center of discussion of urbanism and architecture. You can see this very well in the German pavilion in the Biennale in Venice. This stress test claims that the cities are losing their capacity to host people in a good way, linked to the climate change or because of the climate change and the heat waves that we are facing there. And that brings us, Bauchplan, and also the teaching in the university to the point that maybe the three elements of sustainability, environmental, economic, and social have to be put in another relation, so that every intervention has to follow that climate change impacts. And that goes along with the climate protection, of course, but especially for landscape architecture and urban space planning, climate adaptation and the climate perception, so that the physical aspect of what we do for the people in the cities, and climate justice, which is a especially important aspect to my mind. And this comes into a time where we have something like a transformation fatigue. People are tired of changing systems. We have a rollback in policies, and we are losing a social consensus that we have to change and act according to climate change. And in front of this background, I was able to work in a research project for the Federal Office of City Development of Germany, the BBSR. There was a collaboration between the university and Bauchplan, and meanwhile this research is being carried on in a second step. And the first, I will try to give you an insight now into this research work, and then I will try to show you the showcase of Karlsruhe train station square. So the whole project is embodied into the adjustment strategies of the German government that was launched some years ago, already in 2008. Adaptation strategies for the climate change, and we're in this cluster of spatial planning and population protection. And we were asked to find indicators for the successful adaptation of in the field of town planning to climate change. In a funneling process with expert interviews and expert workshops, we finally identified two key indicators that would that can address an adaptation process or an adaptation strategy. That this is a blue infrastructure and a green infrastructure, the natural water balance as the equilibriums of evapotranspiration, direct runoff, and groundwater formation on the one side, and this of course linked to the green infrastructure, where we made a key indicator comprised of four part indicators, which is the green cover, which also or the green surfaces in the cities, the green supply, which is rather linked to the population, not to the space, the accessibility to green shaded spaces, and the tree canopy factor, which is also linked to the nature restoration law of the European Union. So the natural water balance is a figure which is well known and which can be developed can be calculated very sharp. The problem is that in existing areas, you normally lack the exact data to calculate it. So we try to rather work now because the indicators are to be developed for the existing cities in Germany bigger than 10,000 people in the overall and federal level. We rather work with the sealing percentage of the soil. And here's the, the heat prevention through climate active green urban spaces. So that's the four part indicators that I already mentioned: the green cover, the supply, accessibility, and the tree canopy factor. We link our research also to policy making, and that means that we were interested to develop indicators which are easy to understand and to communicate. I don't know if you're familiar with Cecil Krondyke and this very nice indicator that he developed with the 3-30-300 rule, which he made to say everybody should see at least 3 trees from his windows. 30% of the tree cover of the city should be covered with trees, and also a figure that we use, the 300 meters that you should have to access a heat preventing green space in a city. These two indicators are directly linked to each other because green indicators only work if you have a water supply, and we are also facing more and more droughts in the cities. So we have to link the blue indicator with a water balance and the green indicators with the green urban spaces. And we also, of course, have to combine as designers not only the quantities, but also the qualities of green open spaces. The next thing is that I already mentioned the political surrounding in which we are facing today. So we will not be able to adapt all cities in all parts at once. And we have to focus on the areas which are hit most by heat and extreme droughts and water or rainfalls, the climate hazards. So we also try to identify climate remediation areas, areas in the cities which have to be addressed first in adaptation strategies. And here comes to the exposition of climate change, also the sensitivity of the population. This is linked to their social status and to their possibility to flee the city in heat events, for example. And also their physical affectedness to climate events. So we have a vulnerability that is especially high for elderly people and for children. And here Europe is in the front row. Not only that climate change is hitting Europe the most, but also Europe is a continent which is quite old compared to other continents on the planet. So we really have a problem that more and more old people are directly affected from, for example, heat waves in climate change, and especially in Europe. So there's every need for action. And this is how we try to address it. Now in the second project, the LUP Potsdam identified or developed an indicator which they call in German Hitzebetroffenheitsindex. So it's the affectedness by heat for people, and this not only uses physical factors but also population aspects like the percentage of elderly people in an area to identify these areas in which we have to act first. And if you look at the areas which are hit most by heat waves, we tried, this was a small triad within the research project. You can see that especially inner city, highly built areas here in Berlin, for example, in the central district, have very little potential to add green in new areas. You would have to tear down buildings, so the adaptation capacity is quite low here. And this is why streetscapes will have a special role in this adaptation strategies, because they're the only spatial potential that the cities have, which are generally owned by the cities. Of course, there's a lot of underground infrastructure, and we have the aspect of traffic there. So we also have to make the mobility change, the lecture we just heard. And but also for climate adaptation, the streetscapes will be crucial. And this comes especially, thank you for Ronnie for the nice example in Helsinki, but this is a European phenomenon that we have less and less traffic fatalities, which is great. And maybe the streets have to take another function, that they help us to fight mortalities linked to heat and climate change. Bauchplan made a few studies in this area. This is a proposal for the city of Vienna in Germany, or this was a competition entry for Melbourne, claiming that the streets might become the next parks or the next park system of the whole city. But I will try to give you now a small insight into the project I was asked for to present, which is not exactly a street, but it's a sponge city project that we did in Karlsruhe. Bauchplan did in Karlsruhe city. On the south side of the main station, there's a new business district being developed, or was developed, and you can see here the high rise in the back. There was a competition carried out, and in a very intense process, we were negotiating these climate aspects. There was a first prize win in the competition. This is how the square looked like before. Of course, there's also an underground parking underneath the square. So we have this climate or this adaptation problem also in the underground. Karlsruhe is in the southern Rhine Valley, so it's especially affected from heat waves by nature or by location already. And this square is facing south, so it's exposed to the sun all day. And we have also the reflections from the architecture, which is the same building on the other side. It's like a mirror. And these were the driving parameters and aspects of the design already. We were dealing with the heat that would be there, wind turbulences, reflection, and the functions that are normal to a train station square. So we have the mobility, which comes through the square. We have the people arriving and leaving. And we also wanted to give some spaces for resting and cooling down. The whole design process was linked to climate simulations that we conducted in-house. We found out that with the shading and the cooling of trees, we can cool down the square by 10 degrees, which doesn't maybe not sound so much, but it can, in a hot day, it can be the difference between 45 degrees and 35 degrees. So it's between a hot summer day and maybe the collapse of a weak person. So it can be a decisive difference of 10 degrees Celsius. This is a section, so you see that the square is in large parts with the underground parking underneath. The parameters that did the design left when you care about the driveways of the firefighters and rescue and deliveries. There was two big or two areas which we could really use for climate adaptation. And these areas, the surface is shaped in a way that we collect the rainwater, even though there's very little probability of snow and ice in the southern Rhine Valley. We could not prevent or we did not get the promise from the city that, or from the Deutsche Bahn, that they could refrain from using salt in this area. So we had to keep some areas irrigating or draining in a classical way, bring it to the sewers. But in these blue areas, we collect the rainwater and bring it directly to the trees. There's a space of 1,200 cubic meters of soil for these two groups of trees. It's spread evenly above or in these tree areas, so that all areas are attractive for the trees to bring their roots. And this looks maybe like a heating system that you know from your house's floor heating system. So it's quite a technical infrastructure underneath the square to make it possible for the trees to grow. Here's some more details also from the construction site, and some calculations on which drought periods we will have and how much water we have to store on the ground to still make it possible for the trees to survive. Here's another technical plan where you see the two areas with the trees, the two groups of trees, and we also have a fountain on the square which separates the taxis from the rest of the square. We did calculations on how much shade we will have depending on the size of the trees that we plant, and also how much evapotranspiration that we will have for cooling down the square with a green volume that we put on. I was talking about the compromises that we were negotiating in the whole process. The left image shows what the city normally does when the trees are newly planted. The center shows what we wanted to build, and in the end we made a compromise, planting big and small trees at the same time. And this gives the square, you will see it in the pictures, to my eyes, a very nice appearance. So it doesn't look like newly planted, but also already grown in a bit. This is the first year after the construction. So you see the smaller and the bigger trees, which gives us a quite lively appearance. You can see the two high-rise buildings to the sides and the main station in the back. It's the southern entrance to the main station of Karlsruhe. The city is in the north. We, of course, integrated also places for bikes. You can see the areas where we have the possibility that the water also infiltrates into the ground directly in these stripes. And here you also see the wet surface, which is the fountain separating the taxi driveway from the rest of the square. Yeah, if you ever have the chance to travel to Germany, I would recommend you get off at Karlsruhe and have a look at the square. Also, the lighting was designed especially for this place, making a quite comfortable place, and also with this planting system with the big areas for the trees, the 1,200 cubic meters. We are very happy to see the trees growing up to 1 meter already in the first year. So it's quite a successful project. Yes, another top shot at night. Yeah, I hope I could make clear that Europe is especially affected by climate risk, that we have to address these risks with both blue and green infrastructures, that the streets are really crucial to climate adaptation in areas where we don't have enough space to make big parks or additional green areas. And with this last example, I wanted to show that we have nature-based solutions, even though it's a lot of engineering in this project, to address also these problematic areas for trees and for planting. So the technical solutions are there, and it's now about using the opportunity to address the streets. Thank you for your attention.